I'm Miss Manoy, and I'm here today to talk to you all about some strategies on how to write that introductory paragraph to your argumentative piece or your informative piece, how to get started organizing your ideas so that the rest of the paper that you write, which essentially still kind of follows that two-seek format, the body paragraphs do, will go really smoothly, and it'll be easy for your readers to understand because the most important thing is that you are communicating through the written word to them, that you're able to get your point across what you want to communicate. So we're going to talk about HIT. HIT stands for hook, intro, and thesis. And I want you to think about this image I have here, my Bitmoji playing tennis. I was actually looking for the baseball emoji, but there is no Bitmoji with baseball. So the tennis will work. Because I want you to think of HIT as not like a punch in the face, but rather like throwing something up and lobbing it over. And then everybody in the audience is going to be looking at it, watching that ball and following that ball. Just like when they read your introduction, you're going to hit it up, you're going to grab their attention really quick, and then they're going to keep reading on. They're going to know what to expect. They know where that ball is going. They're going to follow that line of trajectory. So that's the kind of metaphor, the image I want you to have in mind when you think about HIT. Hook, intro, and thesis. Now, the definitions, let me do this in present mode. It'll probably look a little bit better. The definitions: hook, that's your opening sentence or sentences that grabs the reader's attention. Now, lots of times you'll have teachers will give you like a long list of ways to kind of start. You could start, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, like with a quote or an imagine this or an interesting statement. Writing theory goes, research shows us that you've got to master how to do a thoughtful question first. And then from there, once you know how to do a thoughtful question, you can try some other things too. This is the second part here is called the introduce part. And this is the part that when I was a teacher, I didn't realize how important it was. It was something as a writer I was kind of doing naturally. But when kids would ask me now, how do I make this make sense? How do I write my intro paragraph? I didn't have that tool, that strategy to fall back on to explain what the introduce is. And the introduce is basically like kind of a restatement of your prompt. Sometimes the introduce, you can go back to the prompt and find exactly the wording you want to use. Or it's like giving some background to what you're even writing about. Maybe set the reader up. Like if you were writing an editorial, you might want to set the reader up for saying, I know there's been a surplus of money in our middle school budget. I know you're trying to decide on what to do with it. Then that would lead you into your thesis, which is a statement about exactly what you would want to do with that money. But you're given that background of, I know there's been a surplus. I know you have money. Or I've been a student for a long time. I know what's best for our community. Like give some sort of intro, some kind of connection between your hook and then your statement. I always think of it as that inverse triangle. You start out broad with your hook, and then you go down to that main point, which is your thesis. And again, I want you to think of it as lobbing it up like with a tennis racket. When you punch somebody, like with a hook, like you got their attention, but then you just kind of like punched them and they're unconscious. They're out of it. So you want to think of it more as your intro should be something that grabs their attention, but that they still follow along and keep going. You don't want them just to stop once the hook is over and they don't have that interesting sentence to read. Again, hook is the first sentence. It grabs the reader's attention. You want to write it in a way that's the very first thing that the reader's going to see is your hook. So you want to grab their attention, maybe something, think about it thematically. What is this overall feeling that you want to get across to your reader? This is a great time to be creative. You could even do a narrative type beginning with an anecdote or an imagine this. Instead of just doing like a statement or a statistic, or you could just start out by giving a thoughtful question. But this is kind of the place where you have some room to be creative and make your writing really original. When you grab their attention, you can kind of start even almost telling like a story, a narrative way. Or you can go a more basic way with a thoughtful question or a strong statement. We'll dive more into that in another video. But overall, there's something I wanted to get across to you is that you want to find some sort of emotional connection with your reader. Think about what you want your reader to feel. And that hook is a great place to really start tapping into those emotions. And why I want you to do that is because emotions are what drives everybody. Yes, facts, statistics, all of that stuff is important. The truth is important. but you've also got to find a way to present the truth and the facts and statistics in a way that really pulls on somebody's emotions and heartstrings, that makes it personal to them, to make it so that they should care. If not, people will just kind of tune you out. If you kind of like got to make it all about them so that they'll want to read it and see how it applies to them. Again, like I said, you could begin with a quote and imagine this. I'll have this Google slide up for you to refer back to, and then I'm going to do some more detailed examples of hooks. The introduce is that background information. A lot of times it can be a restatement of what the prompt is. It's where you define the subject and you give that background information, maybe the reasons why you're writing, or a description of who you are and why you should be such an expert on this. This is where you introduce that. This is where you build up from that hook and that connection to your thesis. For example, if you're writing about the best use of the surplus of money, that's where you would give that background information. I'm a student at Garrett Middle. I really care about this surplus of money that we have. I know we have it, and I want us to spend it in the right ways. And so you can kind of give some background information there. Now, the thesis is the target. It is the most important sentence that you're writing, to be honest, because it's the point. It's your main point. Every paragraph after that, it's like your body paragraphs. Your topic sentence is like the thesis of that one paragraph. But this is the main thesis. Is not just a topic sentence. This is a statement that comes in your introduction. It should be the last sentence of your introduction. It's what you that's what you leave the readers with on your intro, where you say exactly what your claim is, what you believe, what you're writing about, what's the main point of it, without having to say, I'm going to tell you about this. That's what you maybe learned in elementary school, and now we need to take away the I'm going to tell you about. And then sometimes you can write I'm going to tell you about and then just literally mark it off on your final draft, and your thesis will make sense. But I always try to think of your thesis as your statement and then a preview of the topic of every one of your body paragraphs. So it'll be like giving a preview of what those supporting details are before you start giving examples and elaboration. That thesis is like the nucleus. It's like the claim. It's whatever the question of the prompt is. It's that restatement of what you're adding to it, what you're going to be telling about. Are you informing about dolphins today, or are you giving your opinion on something? Are you arguing? Are you doing a science experiment where you're talking about the claim of the scientist or whatever it is? But that thesis is so important because it shows the reader not just like what the main point is, but it also shows them how you are going to structure the essay or writing piece, rather. It shows them if you're going to be descriptive, if you're going to have problems and solutions, are you going to tell cause and effect? It tells that text structure. So the reader consciously, or maybe it's subconsciously, already knows how to kind of form their brain to how they're going to be reading it. What's the text structure going to be, so they know how to understand it the best way possible. Now, here's an example of an intro paragraph, and I'm going to read through it, and I want you to think about what the hook is, what the intro, and what the thesis is. And it goes in that order. You start with the hook, intro, and thesis, but I want you to see how they all can work together and how important each step of the way is. So I'm going to start. Have you ever noticed that we learn more about the world from socializing with our peers than from our textbooks and teachers? I certainly can say that I've learned more over the years in the locker room than the classroom. As an African-American male who played football, it was expected that I would do the bare minimum in class, but shine on the field. I felt embarrassed in the classroom as my knees couldn't even fit under the desk and my body didn't belong there. On the field, I came to life. In fact, I've come to realize that football is the answer to my self-confidence and purpose. All right, so we have started off with that hook, and notice they did a thoughtful question. I'm going to color code it. Sometimes color coding helps me. Maybe it will you. But the pink here is the hook. What I want you to notice is they started out with this thoughtful question over like the overall theme of what they're writing about, how he's learned more from his peers than textbooks. But he also just he asked that question thoughtfully and he answered it. Sometimes you can do that. It doesn't have to be just a plain rhetorical question. He said, have you ever noticed this? And he says, I certainly can say that I've learned more over the years in the locker room than I have in the classroom. So he answered that within his hook. Then his introduction was him giving some background information of who he was and why this writing piece is so important to him. He talks he's an African-American male. He feels that a lot wasn't expected of him in the classroom, and he struggled to fit in there, but he did fit in on the football field and playing sports. Then we get to that thesis, the very last sentence of of this writing piece, and he says, in fact, uses that transition. I've come to realize that football is the answer to my self-confidence and purpose. So we've got the subject, that football, and we know that's what he's going to be writing about. Well, what about football? He's going to tell us how football helped his self-confidence and how football helped his purpose. And that'll give us the topic sentence to each of our body paragraphs. So I also highlighted it this way where you can see it in the words are color coded if that helps more. And I just want to leave you with how the hit strategy is for your introduction and how it's all about hooking the reader's attention. And it's like hitting that tennis ball and you pops up in the air and you've hooked them, you've got their attention, and they follow that tennis ball all the way through your article. That's the metaphor I want you to think about, is how you hook their attention, you give that background information, and you tell that thesis so they know exactly what they're going to be watching from then on. Very important to start out with that introduction strong, because that's the first thing they're going to read. And this is something we need to practice a lot this year. And this is what makes a difference in a lot of writing scores on state tests. But it also, more importantly, is what makes a difference with our writing and how to make it better and how to ultimately communicate in the best way possible. All right. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.